Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello, and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today, I'm excited to be talking to Saint Sukie de la Croix about the peculiar case of the Follies dancer, a Twilight Manors in Palm Springs book. Welcome, Sukie.
Well, thank you for asking me. And I can see all of your audience now. And they're not all wearing their clothes, are they?
No, not at all. Some of them listen to us in the nude and while they're doing things they shouldn't.
Or maybe they shouldn't. I know. Bras, panties, and that's just the men.
That's absolutely right. I know what a few of their secrets are. We might tell some of them.
Well, don't tell me your secrets. It'll be in the next book.
Well, you know what? I've not been in a book yet. I haven't even been arrested, so I might tell you a secret towards the end.
Okay.
So this is your third book in the series, is that correct?
In this series, yes. It's not my third book. I think it's probably my 15th or 16th book. This is the third book in the series, yes.
All right. And tell us about who our main characters are.
Well, the main characters are Brian and Stephane. They're a gay couple that retired from Chicago to Palm Springs, as I did with my mother. But of course, I'm nothing like any of those dreadful characters in the book. That's completely from my imagination.
I will say that I loved their camp, their bickering, their back and forth, their banter. It was so well done and so funny. I mean, there are so many laugh out loud moments in this book.
Well, what I wanted to do, it was really, honestly, seriously, it was an experiment because a lot of Americans like British humor, like Monty Python, Absolutely Fabulous, even Benny Hill. But they can't seem to do that humor themselves. So I thought, I wonder what would happen if I had American characters and put British humor into their mouths. What would that look like? And that's where it comes from, you know. Where nothing. Well, they moved to Palm Springs to retire quietly, and everything goes wrong.
I think so. I think so often when we do decide we're going to retire and be very quiet, it never works out that way. Or if it does, it's boring as hell, right?
That would be awful. That would be just awful if everything went according to plan. I mean, that's my nightmare. My whole life has been a nightmares about things going according to plan. I just can't think of anything worse.
I agree with you. I tell people so often that the stupidest things happen to me. I run into something, I trip over something, and it's just to give me fodder for later on because I can totally laugh at myself. I'll laugh at you and everyone else, but I'll laugh at me first. So why not?
You have to be able to laugh at yourself.
That's the
power of humor. And it makes you, if you can laugh at yourself, you're a very strong person.
I think so. You know, it's one of those things that it's hard to really recognize great humor in someone else if you can't laugh at yourself, you know. And
I feel sorry for people that can't laugh. But there are some people, I don't know, there must be a psychiatric name for this, but there are some people that have no sense of humor at all.
The name is called bitter. And that's something we certainly aren't. So
if you let life affect you in any way, you become bitter.
That is true.
I tend to ignore everything. I live in my own little bubble.
I think that's why the day you and I met, I was like, I have found a kindred spirit for sure.
I know. Well, you were working the strip.
Well, you know,
on a street in New Orleans.
It's I was not working the first time
as well. You stopped me. I was walking down there like I was the prettiest girl in town.
Well, you were.
Well, until you stopped me.
Well,
that's when I had the competition.
Oh, I love competition. I absolutely do. So Brian and Stephane set out to have a breakfast, and then they have a wild time at
Yeah.
Le Grand Polla Negra, which I just love the name of the restaurant.
Well, I do tend to put in lines in Spanish that are funny, and I think if you speak Spanish, you will laugh at that joke. If you don't, you won't see it at all. And I have my friend in the local coffee shop, Juan, translates funny Spanish, funny lines. And one of the, well, I think it's in that book. One of the lines I asked him to translate was, there's two nuns and a woman, and she's praying at her father's grave, and she calls them over, and she says to them in Spanish, I had it translated, but in English it is, please, will you pray with me? My father was a sinful man. He died with a penis in his mouth. Which one translated for me. But you don't speak Spanish, you won't know. You won't get the joke.
You'll just assume she needs somebody to pray with her.
Yes.
So, that's one great thing about going to Palm Springs. Your characters, your main characters you describe as fellas of a certain age.
Yes.
And that's a great thing about going to Palm Springs, because we do see that, we live in a youth-oriented society, as I guess we really have to. I guess every society is that way. But when you age, some people feel like they've aged out. And that's something that I don't feel like with your book. You are inclusive of everyone, especially those of us of a certain age. Is it important to you?
Yes. Yes, it is. But British humor is to throw everything in. Kitchen sink, everything. That's why there's Hell's Angels in the book, because Hell's Angels don't figure in gay life at all.
No.
They don't figure in anybody's life, really, except their own.
Except their own. And I
do find, I mean, in Palm Springs, it's true. In Palm Springs, try organizing a dinner party. I was like, I can't come. I've got a colonoscopy. I'm having skin cancer reboot. It's trying to get everybody together in one place.
Yes. And a lot of
falling apart.
Well, yeah.
And everybody's getting knees replaced. And I always say, replaced by what?
It is hard to get people together when you can only get parts of them together at a time.
And they come in on their walkers, and it's. But old age is funny. I've discovered, as I'm 71 years old, I think it's really you stop worrying about things you used to worry about. And it's just funny. I find old age incredibly funny. But I find overweight people funny as well. And that's not fashionable at all.
No, well, so, before we started recording, it is something I think we should talk about is, in today's world, I do try to be politically correct, and I do try to be respectful of other people. But we do get, as you mentioned earlier, a bit from the right and the left about what we can and cannot say and can and cannot do. Right. And you will drive yourself insane if that's all you do is sit around worried about what someone else thinks. Yeah. I think that's where your British humor comes through in this book, because you get a chance to say things that maybe some other author wouldn't dare say because they don't have that kind of humor.
Well, let's get this right. I don't say it. My characters say it.
Well, that is a good distinction.
I am so politically correct. As a human being, myself, the characters are not. I'm not getting myself off the hook. But I'll tell you what, people that get, offended by everything, I'm offended all the time. I'm offended every time I see a Bible, every time I see that poor Jewish man hanging on a cross outside of a church, and children see that torture. I'm offended by that. I'm offended if I see meat on a menu. I'm offended all the time. I don't expect people to stop eating meat or stop reading the Bible. It's such a supreme arrogance with these people because they're offended by it. Nobody should read it. Well, fuck you, Mary,
Totally agree.
I don't give a shit about these people. Oh.
Neither do I. And, that's a big thing because at the conference we were at in New Orleans, one of the panels I sat on or went to see was about book banning and stuff like that. And, if you don't want to read something, don't read it.
Yeah, don't read it. Let me say now, my book is politically incorrect, and some people might find it offensive. If you still read it, well, it's your fucking problem, and I don't care. That's the thing. That's British comedy writers. If you look at Ricky Gervais,
yes,
he says, "I don't care if you're offended," and I don't. I don't care at all.
And if we don't ever
this kind of thing,
and if we never offend anyone, then we don't ever have a chance to perhaps make them see something they wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Exactly. How do they think change happens? I mean, something like slavery. Why did slavery end? People were offended by it.
Yes.
It became a thing. Controversy equals discussion.
Yes, totally agree. Totally agree. So in this book, and I will not give any of this away because if whomever's listening has to read it for themselves, but I just adore the fact that you take people that we know in movies and in music, and you give us some descriptions of people having met them, and it is a deliciousness that I have not seen in a very long time, and my hat's off to you on that, Sukie, because I just think it's adorable.
Well, they're not sacred.
No, and I don't think really should anyone
Nothing is sacred, Goldie Hawn goes to the toilet,
Yes.
And I'd love to see a video of it. To be honest. Who wouldn't, really?
Well, and that is yet one of the things that I laughed so much about this book. You give us situations with even the main characters with Brian and Stephane that are just so sometimes ridiculous. If you read it on the surface, it's a little bit ridiculous, but the truth of the matter is things happen. All of us at a certain age, and probably even young people, have been caught short occasionally.
Right.
I mean, nobody wants to be caught short, but it does happen. So you want it to be at a situation. Yeah, I sort of like to read about it. I mean, I felt sorry for Brian, but sadly, I was in that exact same place a couple of weeks ago. So I was like, these things happen in real life.
You laughed at the llama.
I did. Oh, Lord, did I ever?
The llamas are funny,
Yes, they are. And a friend of mine was just at the Living Zoo in Palm Springs looking for that damn llama. So
I take my friends there to see the giraffes, and they say, "Why are we going there?" I said, "You've got to see the giraffes." Mm-hmm. And they say, "Why?" And I take them there, and then we're feeding carrots. They said, "Why did you bring us here?" I said, "Look at the tongues. Look at that tongue and try not to think about sex."
That's absolutely right. Those giraffes are really rather talented.
Yes.
My hat's off to them as well.
I will say the story, I know you're not going to talk about it, the story about what happens in the bathroom, that happened to a friend of mine. That's actually a true story.
I just cannot get away from the fact that it is real life. We like to think that all of life is, just goes along smoothly, but that is not the case.
No, it's not the case at all.
I actually did. I did a full stretch out split once because I didn't have a choice. So it's just one of those things that happens.
Well, you can't laugh about it because you just become embarrassed otherwise. You just fall into a hole,
Precisely.
But in Palm Springs, there's always somebody, when you're in a restaurant with 10 bears, but there's always somebody having an accident or something. Diaper falls off or something.
Yeah,
you have to laugh.
You do, because otherwise you're going to end up crying, and that gives me puffy eyes, and I don't want that.
You laugh or you cry. I just think
It is one or the other.
But I wrote these books. I mean, now I've had a whole career as a historian of gay history, and I've worked for newspapers, and I was a photographer. I wrote 2 plays, short stories. But I thought at this point, I've spent my life doing good works and writing history books, so we all can read about our history and that. And I thought I would like to spend whatever time I've got left just having fun. So I'm just doing this. I'm writing the Twilight Manors books absolutely purely for my own amusement.
Well, I appreciate that, because they have amused me as well, and I'm absolutely obsessed with them. It's just fun, and I cannot reiterate enough that fun is so important, and you have brought us hilarity and fun. And also, if someone hasn't been to Palm Springs and they need a roadmap of Palm Springs and the area around it, you have certainly hit on all of those as well.
Well, all the venues are based on real places. I've changed the names. But
some of them I knew, some of them I'm like, oh, that's on my list for the next time in Palm Springs.
Some people said it's very Palm Springs. You know?
It is. And I think there again, that's something that really appealed to me. Palm Springs is a place that a lot of people go to because they want to. So it's not like a through destination. Most people that go to Palm Springs, they're intended to go there to live, vacation, or just a weekend. So it's a happy place in my estimation, and you've captured that happiness. So,
well, it's mostly old people who don't give a fuck anymore. It's too late, right?
Well,
it's too late to improve your personality. It's too late to. It's like, oh fuck it, I'm the way I am.
and they can't run very fast, so you can always capture the story.
You can't. No, they don't run fast at all. I can outrun most of them. Well, most of them, they've got these new knees, you know.
Yes, it's when they get to the bionic.
I want some new knees. I said, everybody's getting knee replacement. And he said, there's nothing wrong with your knees. I said, I don't like them. I want some new ones, you know. And oh my God, the facelifts here.
We have that in Los Angeles. You know, if there's a fire, everyone runs because they might melt. So we don't really.
I can't know if anybody's looking at me. I go to this coffee shop every day to proofread and, you know, just hang out for a couple of hours. And there's a lot of D-listers there. And they were, they were in a movie somewhere, or they were a dead body in Law and Order on TV. You know, they've had their 2 minutes or whatever. And they come in, and they always have a little gay with them, and that's quite interesting because I always listen to those conversations. But their faces are like, you know,
no emotion, emotion. But they need a hanger-oner.
That's right. Somebody sit there and say how wonderful they are. Maybe I should get one of those.
I wouldn't mind one of those myself.
25-year-old following you around saying how fabulous you are. That'd be perfect.
I think so too. The only thing is you have to pay them eventually, and that's.
Yeah, I suppose so. They don't, well, there is that. Yes.
Yes. Oh, I really have enjoyed this, and I also, one of the things I did a little dive on you, and to see that yes, this is your 3rd book in the Twilight Manors series, but you have been very busy, and a lot of wonderful history, as you mentioned before, and it's so important because. As we all age and move on, the next generation needs to know where we've been and what our stamp was on life. So I've enjoyed your history stuff as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have a website or social media you would like to share?
You can find me on Facebook.
Fantastic.
And that's the only thing I've got really. Or there's the Rattling Good Yarns Press website, which it's easy to find. But I don't know exactly it is.
And I will put.
I'm not hard to find.
Well, and you do have a very unique name, so it does make you a little easier to find than someone like me.
It's actually my real name. That's the sad thing. I can't even say I'm writing under another name.
Well,
it's Saint Sukie Delacroix.
I love that.
Yeah, patron saint of homosexuals.
It's nice to be a saint of something.
Saint, but no angel. That's for sure.
I will let you say that. So, but I think I agree with you as well. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been.
I enjoyed it very much.
Me too. Hang on, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at OutWithDan.com, on Twitter at OutWithDan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.